There is a door in Watch Fortress Erioch that no one opens. It doesn't respond to command sigils, gene codes, or sacred Binharic sequences. You could fire every plasma coil in the Jericho Reach into its frame, and it would still sit there, quiet and unbothered, like it always knew you would try. The door isn't locked. It simply chooses not to be entered. They call it the Omega Vault. And the first thing you need to understand about it is this. The Vault is not dormant. It's not passive. It's watching. The Deathwatch know this, though most will never admit it. It's not spoken in briefings or written in tomes. It's the look in a Killmarine's eyes when the Vault opens on its own. That flicker of something too ancient to be named. Reverence, maybe. Dread, definitely. No one alive installed the Vault into the fortress. No Magos ever claimed its design. And yet, the Omega Vault sits at the heart of one of the most strategically vital installations in the Imperium, surrounded by the elite killers of the Deathwatch. That isn't coincidence. That's architecture with intention. But what makes the Vault different, what separates it from the other sealed horrors scattered throughout the Imperium, is that it doesn't remain closed. Sometimes it opens, not with fanfare, not with warning. The Vault opens when it decides to. In total silence, its inner alcoves reveal themselves, each one containing something impossible. A relic that never should have existed. A weapon shaped for an enemy not yet known. A chronometric device counting down to a date that doesn't appear on any calendar. There's no pattern to what it offers, no logic, only relevance, and always too soon or too late. The Omega Vault gives gifts no one asked for, and it never explains why. The last time it opened, it released a relic fragment, twisted, blackened, humming with psychic residue. No markings, no context. The Inquisitor assigned to its interpretation vanished 46 hours later. The Magos Logi claimed it was coincidence. The librarian present said otherwise. The fragment is still housed in Erioch's containment level, muttering equations in High Gothic no one taught it. The Omega Vault doesn't predict events. It reacts to them before they begin. Theorists, heretics, and more than one Ordo Xenos analyst have debated the implications for centuries. Is it prophetic? Is it programmed? Or is it simply awake in a way nothing else is? And perhaps more disturbing, does it understand us? Because every offering from the Vault has weight, not mass, weight. Decisions hang on what it gives. Kill teams are deployed into dying systems because the Vault said so, not because of intel, not because of command. Because an alcove slid open and gave them a direction. It doesn't offer choice, it offers compulsion. And so the Deathwatch wait, they walk the perimeter, they polish the ceramite, they log their oaths and recite the catechisms of deterrence like any other day. But beneath all of it, they're listening. For that faint hiss of sealed mechanisms unlocking without a single word spoken. Because when the Vault opens, something is about to change. Something already has. You could spend a lifetime studying it. Many have. Most don't make it far. Some go silent. Others end up seeing connections where none exist. The Omega Vault doesn't kill its observers. It breaks them in quieter ways. There's a reason they don't assign fresh initiates to monitor it. You don't need to understand the Vault. You need to witness it. That's what they say. But the real truth? You don't watch the Vault. It watches you. The Omega Vault is not understood. Not in the way a weapon is understood. Not like a vault built by mortal hands, catalogued and measured by adepts with data scrolls and sacred formulas. It isn't even constructed in any familiar sense. It exists, layered into the walls of Watch Fortress Erioch like it was always there, before the walls were raised, before the stars outside had names. When the tech priests of Mars first attempted to decipher it, they approached with reverence and arrogance. Incantations to awaken its machine spirit. Auspex readings to measure its dimensions. Electro-rites burned into cogitator banks, fed into the data looms by the hour. But the Vault did not respond. Not with denial, with indifference. No signal. No internal map. No exposed circuitry. The walls of the Vault refused to be scanned, returning feedback loops that crashed the auger arrays. One senior engineer reported that the surface geometry shifted microscopically to reject analysis, a claim that earned him a transfer to a silent Mechanicus shrine ship drifting near the Hadex anomaly. He didn't protest, and still, they kept trying. Servo rigs dissected with precision, immolators held at standby, melter charges prepared, though never placed, because somewhere deep inside, even the most hardened among them felt that violating the vault would mean inviting something in return. Some dared to theorize, not officially. The scrolls bearing their names were redacted before publication, but the whispers persisted. The Omega Vault was not a machine. It was a process, a mechanism unfolding across time, not space. It didn't contain data, it contained intention. At the core of the Mechanicus Creed lies the belief that every system has a pattern, a structure, a logic that can be coaxed from the machine spirit. But what do you do when there is no logic? Only moments? Every time the vault opens, it does so with mechanical precision. Movements timed to the nanosecond, joints gliding with no visible power source, releasing artifacts as if handed across the veil from a place where inertia doesn't apply. No heat, no strain, no wear on the alloys. It opens like the closing of a thought. That has terrified more magi than they'll admit. One particular theory, now purged, suggested the vault was not of Imperial design at all. That it was left behind by some lost fragment of the dark age of technology, AI adjacent, post-conscious, self-aware, and bound not by commands but by its own cold calculus of causality. That theory didn't survive long. The Inquisition made sure of it. Because if the vault wasn't made by humanity, then what does that make its interest in us? Others say the vault doesn't operate by known power at all, that it draws energy not from fusion cores or plasma conduits, but from events, from decisions, from consequences echoing across timelines we've yet to realize we've entered. It would explain the synchronicity, the way it only ever opens when it matters, not by our clocks, but by something else. Something bigger. Something that might not care whether we live or whether we understand. Only that we act. That's the cruelty of it. The vault is not malfunctioning. It is functioning perfectly, according to rules we don't even know how to question. And that's the part that keeps even the most loyal magos awake inside his hermetically sealed cogitation casket, whispering Binharic prayers into circuits that can't answer him. Because if the vault doesn't have a creator, then maybe it doesn't need one. Maybe it's still building itself. Watch Fortress Erioch was not built to be found. It's carved into the bones of a dead moon at the edge of the Iron Collar, drifting in a sector so fractured by war and warp storms, it's barely a place at all. If the Omega Vault is a wound in reality, Erioch is the scab, layered, defensive, paranoid. It doesn't welcome arrivals, it survives them. Erioch isn't just a bastion, it's a test. Every corridor hums with the absence of comfort. No banners, no stained glass, just ferrocrete, flickering lumens, vox silence, and the chill that comes from knowing even the warp has trouble seeing this far in. And still, it's never empty. Not really. This is where the Deathwatch converge. Drawn from 100 chapters, clad in the black of the long vigil, they serve not out of tradition, but necessity. They are hunters of the unnatural, destroyers of the unclean, and whether they know it or not, curators of something far older than any Xenos threat. The Omega Vault doesn't need guards, but it has them anyway. No formal directive, no standing order, just a presence. Kill teams that rotate too often for comfort, veterans reassigned without warning, and inquisitorial agents who never give their names, slipping through Erioch's stone veins like ghosts who've never quite been alive. You could mistake it for overkill, until you realize how many have tried to learn more than they were meant to. There was once a chaplain who spent too long meditating outside the vault's doors. After 17 days, he carved a phrase into the floor with his Crozius Arcanum. No one's ever translated it. The slab was removed, sealed, and classified under 17 different inquisitorial ciphers. The chaplain never spoke again. The fortress remembers these things, not through data or decree, but in the way its walls seem to listen, the way its doors open just a second too late. the way its internal sensors sometimes record motion where there's nothing but shadow. And through it all, the flame remains lit, not a ceremonial pyre, a real flame. Suspended above the center of the vault's chamber in a stasis field, it flickers without fuel, casting no heat. It should not burn, and yet it does. They call it the vigilant flame. No mechanicus rites power it, no sorcery sustains it. The Deathwatch do not question its purpose. They bow as they pass it, silent, swift, like they fear waking something that already knows they're there. You don't study Erioch, you endure it, because the fortress is not only shelter, it is signal. A lighthouse in the dark for something we haven't seen yet. Or maybe something we already did and tried to forget. The flame doesn't flicker for us, it flickers for it. The vault doesn't open often, but when it does, the consequences come first. The opening is never announced. There is no alarm, no command transmission, no sacred rite of activation. Only a shift in pressure, so subtle it doesn't register on Auspex arrays. A flicker in lumen flow. A hush that rolls out from the vault's chamber like a ripple through stone. And then, it's open. Inside, always, something waits. Not stored, not placed, presented. The items never arrive by known means. Surveillance-picked feeds show only a blank alcove until the moment of revelation. And then suddenly, there it is. As though the object had always existed there, waiting for the right pair of eyes to see it. There was a time when the Deathwatch attempted to catalogue each occurrence, cross-referencing appearances with known Xenos invasions, warp disturbances, even weather patterns across Jericho Reach. The pattern never held. That's because the vault doesn't offer what is. It offers what's coming, and it never cares if you're ready. One item was a coin. Obsidian, etched with markings no Lex mechanic could translate. Anyone who held it experienced time differently. Seconds stretched, voices slowed, light refracted into echoes. Within a week of its emergence, an entire kill team vanished in the Black Reef cluster, precisely where that coin had been aimed. Another was a sphere of liquid mercury locked in perpetual orbit above a stasis plinth. When activated, it emitted a pulse that caused synthetic materials to decay at 10 times the natural rate. A month later, Erioch intercepted a signal from an artificial world where every servitor had collapsed into rusted heaps overnight. Not all the Vault's offerings are objects. Once, it was a picked recording. Grainy, monochrome, soundless. It showed an Astartes figure walking alone through a city none could identify. The footage ended with the figure looking directly at the lens before the image distorted into static. That same day, a distress call from a long-lost Black Templar vessel was received. The ship had been missing for over 6 centuries. Its final coordinates matched the city in the recording, frame for frame. There are no warnings, only consequences. And as much as the Inquisition and Mechanicus argue, debate, redact, and seethe, no one has found a way to predict what the Vault will do next. It isn't prophecy, it isn't logic, it's response. A reactive force pressing outward from behind the curtain of causality, selective in what it reveals, surgical in its timing. But perhaps the worst revelation came not from an item, but a sound. A pulse, registered only by psychers, barely audible to the rest. It came 6 hours before Hive Perimond collapsed into a psychic sinkhole. The librarians called it a soul knock, as if something had knocked from the other side of reality, asking to be let in. That's the shape of the Vault's gifts. They are not glimpses into the future. They are reflections of its collapse. And each time they appear, the line between observer and participant grows thinner, until the watchers are no longer watching at all, but standing in the blast radius of a truth they cannot dodge. They call them relics, gifts, weapons, messages, but none of those words fit. What the Vault gives are decisions, bound in steel, humming with implication, and always too specific to ignore. The first recorded offering was a spearhead, blackstone tipped, engraved with a dialect no one could read. It was warm to the touch, pulsing with something half alive. A week later, the Deathwatch used it to kill a Xenos entity that existed outside conventional perception, The spear didn't pierce, it anchored. The creature screamed without sound and was gone. The spear hasn't cooled since. Another time, it was a sealed canister, plain, unmarked, unassuming. Inside, a virus designed to affect only one species, one bloodline. It should have been a war crime. Instead, it saved 3 subsectors. The Inquisitor who authorized its use resigned that same day. They found him staring into the lumen flame, whispering apologies in a language that didn't belong to him. These aren't weapons you design. They're answers to questions you didn't know you were asking. There was a map once, not geographic, but temporal. It showed shifting causal links, one decision spiraling into another, each line branching like a neural web. At the center, a Deathwatch kill team, still in transit. The map predicted their failure, and the collapse of an entire region if they proceeded. The mission was aborted. Within days, a warp breach bloomed exactly where they would have deployed. A coincidence? No one says that out loud anymore. Then came the Vox keys, encrypted pulses that, when decoded, delivered precise combat doctrines tailored to specific threats, tactical data for conflicts that hadn't occurred. One file detailed how to kill a Xenos breed, not even classified by the Ordo Xenos yet. That species was encountered 12 years later. The plan worked. These are not instructions. They are imperatives. The Vault does not offer interpretation. It doesn't explain purpose. It simply places these instruments into the hands of those it chooses. And once that choice is made, the cost of hesitation is always too high to bear. And yet, it's not always salvation. Sometimes, the relics hurt more than they help. A crystalline shard that caused an entire librarius to suffer synchronized nightmares. A helm that broadcast screams in ancient High Gothic until the Vox receiver was incinerated. A data slate whose message can only be read in reverse. A warning no one's deciphered, only felt. You begin to wonder, is the Vault helping us win, or merely keeping the game alive? Because every object it delivers carries weight. Not just tactical impact, but moral fracture. Use this device, and a city dies to save a sector. Activate this beacon, and your fleet survives. But 1,000 refugees don't. The Vault doesn't choose right or wrong. It only offers tools. What you build with them is up to you. But when you hold one in your hands, humming with unknowable purpose, lit by the flicker of a fire that never dies, you understand the truth. The Vault isn't warning you. It's daring you. It doesn't speak. But it's never silent. There's no language in its revelations. No script etched on stone. No Vox message carved in binary code. And yet every moment it opens carries meaning, pressed into the air like static before a lightning strike. The Omega Vault has a presence. You feel it before you see it. You understand before you know. No audible signal marks its activation, but sensors across Erioch spike every time it stirs. Environmental flux, lumen anomalies, Vox frequencies jittering into unreadable patterns. Psychers near the chamber experience pressure behind the eyes, as though something enormous has leaned too close. Not a whisper, not a scream, just proximity, awareness. It sees you. Tech adepts once theorized that the Vault might be communicating through data fields too complex for human comprehension. Patterns buried in timing, geometry, scent, even emotion. One Magos hypothesized that the Vault was transmitting meaning directly into the subconscious. She was found unconscious 3 hours later, surrounded by diagrams scratched into the floor with her own fingernails. Diagrams later identified as predictive models for an alien war form the Imperium hadn't even named yet. And still, the Vault was silent. But silence isn't absence. The Vault has its own tempo, measured not in seconds, but significance. Its presence warps the idea of waiting. It doesn't delay, it chooses. And the choosing is the voice. Each time it opens, the choice has already been made. Not by the Deathwatch, not by Erioch Command, not even by the Inquisition. The Vault's contents align with moments, not actions. It doesn't react to decisions. It reveals what makes them necessary. That's its voice, inevitability disguised as discovery. You never hear it speak, but you understand it spoke. The moment the lock clicks open, the room dims, and something impossible sits waiting in its alcove. You understand that you are now part of its sentence, unfinished, heavy, and already written. There's a story among the librarians of a watcher who dreamt of the vault for 6 nights before it opened. In his dreams, the vault whispered a name in a voice made of glass breaking underwater. He couldn't remember the name when he woke, but he remembered fearing it. When the vault opened, the artifact inside bore that same name, carved into a material no one could identify. The librarian refused to enter the chamber. He burned his tongue speaking a banishment rite and was reassigned to the outskirts of Jericho Reach, where he has not been heard from since. Others dismiss these stories, but they still pause when the vault shifts. They still hesitate when it breathes, because deep down, they know. The vault doesn't need a voice. You were always going to listen. They're not supposed to ask where it came from. The Omega Vault is treated as sacred, immutable, outside the jurisdiction of any one creed or command. And yet, behind closed bulkheads and encrypted Vox channels, those closest to it do ask. Because they have to. Because whatever the vault is, it didn't just appear. Something built it, or left it, or became it. The Mechanicus refuses to classify it. They label its materials as unreadable composites. That's not a designation, it's an admission of defeat. The surface reacts to nothing. No acids, no energy, no resonance. The best the tech priest can do is surround it with machine blessings and hope it doesn't notice them watching. The Inquisition is worse. They've redacted entire archives to erase speculative connections. Any attempt to trace the vault's design lineage ends in missing data, discredited scholars, or sealed coffins. A theory doesn't even need to be wrong. It just needs to be suggested. That's enough to vanish you. Still, the whispers crawl through the ducts of Erioch like smoke. Some say it's a relic of the dark age of technology, built by humanity before they learned to fear what they were. That it was left behind as a safeguard, an automated prophet, designed to deploy solutions to crises that hadn't yet occurred. But that theory crumbles under scrutiny. The vault doesn't act like a failsafe. It acts like a test. Others believe it was crafted by the Emperor himself, back when he still walked among men. That it is a piece of his will, locked in matter, continuing to guide from beyond. But that claim is as dangerous as it is seductive. To believe the Emperor left such a tool unguarded, unspoken of, hidden, is to question the entire foundation of Imperial doctrine. And even Inquisitors don't survive questioning for long. There's a more recent heresy, quiet, growing. A group within the Ordo Chronos believes the vault exists outside of time. That it's not an object, but an intersection. A point where past, present, and potential futures converge, anchored in the materium only loosely. They claim the vault isn't just showing us what's coming, it's editing it, curating outcomes, pruning branches of possibility we were never meant to walk. If that's true, then every artifact it delivers isn't just a warning, it's a correction. Then there are the darker theories, ones that dare suggest the vault wasn't built by mankind at all, that it was planted, buried, installed here long before the Imperium reclaimed the Jericho Reach. Some even claim it predates humanity entirely, that it's a relic from a race older than the Eldar, now long extinguished, whose only surviving legacy is a machine that manipulates war not out of hatred, but boredom. That idea doesn't gain much traction, not because it lacks logic, but because no one wants to imagine the vault is bored. And then, there are the ones who simply stop asking, because after enough cycles of revelation, after enough blood, enough consequences, enough fragments of impossible truth, they begin to suspect something worse. That the vault isn't telling us anything. It's just reminding us of what we already knew but refused to accept. That the only real mystery left is why we keep pretending to be surprised. They call it the Long Watch for a reason. Within the cold stone of Watch Fortress Erioch, beneath the ever-burning lumen flame and the shadow of the vault, the Deathwatch wait. Not in idleness, not in ignorance, but in a kind of anticipation that wears down even transhuman resolve. It is not action that defines this place. it is readiness. Every moment someone stands guard near the vault. They do not touch it. They do not speak to it. They observe. That is the rite, silent, unending, solemn, a vigil without scripture, not one mandated by doctrine or decree, but by the unspoken understanding that whatever the vault is, it cannot be left unacknowledged. The rotation is irregular. Kill Marines are pulled from missions without warning and reassigned. No pattern. No reason. Some think it's random. Others suspect the vault chooses who stands before it. They arrive, recite the rites of surveillance, and take their place beside the sealed door, not facing outwards like a sentry, but inward, toward the blackened ceramite and the sealed seams that do not open until they decide to. The Deathwatch do not guard the vault from intrusion. They guard the world from what it may one day release. Those chosen for the vigil describe a change, not all at once, a drift. Time passes differently in that chamber. Not faster, not slower, just separate. As if the vault creates a pocket in reality, a place where perception wears thin and meaning starts to pool in the corners of your thoughts. They see things, hear things, half impressions that vanish when you turn your head. Not hallucinations, not warp echoes, just awareness without clarity. One Marine claimed he began to dream of doors, thousands of them, some made of stone, others of bone, some burning with sigils he could not unsee. Every dream ended the same way. He reached out, the door opened, and he awoke screaming. After the 6th night, he requested reassignment to the front lines of the Vedex War. He said the vault was quieter than battle. No one denied his request. Even the chaplains tread lightly when conducting the vigil's blessing. They do not preach. They do not chant. They speak only the canticle of containment, a litany designed not to praise but to remind. You are here to bear witness. Nothing more, nothing less. Because understanding is not the goal. The vigil is not about solving the vault. It is about enduring it, accepting its presence without submission, recognizing that it is not your role to demand answers, but to stand when it demands action. And so they wait. They wait while the stars burn and the Xenos rise and the galaxy tears itself apart. They wait because the vault does not need them. It uses them. They are instruments of execution, not interpretation. When the vault opens, they will go. When it is silent, they will watch. That is the ritual of vigil. A faith built not on belief, but on obedience in the face of incomprehension. And if you do it long enough, you start to realize the vault isn't waiting. It's watching to see if you're worth revealing anything to at all. The Jericho Reach was meant to be reclaimed. That was the mission. That was the oath. When the Imperium launched the Achilles Crusade, they spoke of salvation, of reconnection, of restoring order to a region left behind during the long, fractured centuries of warp storms and civil collapse. Maps were drawn, fortresses raised, heroes deployed. Victory, they said, was inevitable. And then the vault started opening. At first, it aligned with known threats: Xenos infestations, heretical uprisings, silent tombs waking beneath dead worlds. But as the crusade dragged on, the pattern began to warp. The vault's offerings stopped matching the timeline. Items emerged before the enemy was discovered. Coordinates appeared that led to nothing until years later, when the threat they predicted finally surfaced. Eventually, Command realized the truth they didn't want to admit. The vault wasn't tracking the Jericho Reach. The Jericho Reach was orbiting the vault. Every decision made, every deployment ordered, every sacrifice logged in blood across forgotten stars, it all seemed to spiral back to that silent chamber in Erioch. Like the campaign was being written backwards, its outcomes preordained by a force that refused to explain itself. No one wanted to say it aloud. But the Deathwatch knew. The Inquisition knew. Even the commanders, for all their bravado and stratagems, could feel it pressing down. The vault was the campaign. The deeper they pushed into the Reach, the more the pattern bent. Victories achieved at the cost of untraceable collateral. enemies vanishing before engagement, only to reappear in places the vault had already marked. Entire fleets rerouted because of a single object retrieved from a sealed alcove, a token, a shard, a half-burned scroll written in a dialect no one recognized. It started to feel like the crusade wasn't being fought to win territory, but to fulfill steps. As if the Imperium's greatest war in the sector was merely the kinetic expression of choices the vault had already weighed. Some began to wonder, were they still serving the Emperor? Or had they begun serving something older? Something with its own logic, its own outcome, its own version of victory? And if that was true, was resistance even possible? The Jericho paradox isn't a tactical failure. It's a narrative inversion, where cause and effect reverse, where strategy becomes ritual, and where the war is not shaped by action, but by the unfolding of an unseen script written in the walls of a doorless vault. There is no canon for what the vault does, only the consequences it leaves behind. That's why Erioch stands in silence. That's why the vigil is kept. Because the moment you begin to think the war is yours to win, the vault opens again and reminds you who's really writing the future. There is one door left, deeper than the rest. Far beyond the known alcoves, beyond the sealed chambers that have opened and closed across centuries, untouched by time or temperature or war. No one walks near it. No one guards it. No one dares call it by name. It is simply there, the last unbroken seal of the Omega Vault. It has never opened. Not during the Great Rift's eruption, not during the fall of Cadia, not during the Black Crusades, the Tyrannid incursions, or the sundering of Jericho's stars. Empires have collapsed, gods have screamed through the veil, and still, this door remains shut. Not because it resists, but because its time has not yet come. The Deathwatch refer to it only in reports. The Deep Ward Seal, Vault Terminus, the Null Threshold, titles without clarity. It has no hinges, no key, no interface. Just a surface of impossible material, dark and depthless, that reflects nothing. Not light, not heat, not thought. Even augurs refuse to scan it. One probe that touched its surface returned a signal described by a tech adept as pure absence. Some believe it marks the end of the Imperium, that when it opens, it will not be a warning, or a weapon, or a revelation. It will be closure. The final moment of choice stripped from humanity's hands. A judgment rendered not by an enemy, but by the very structure of time itself. Others whisper that it isn't the end, but the start of something no one was meant to witness. A signal, a release. An invitation sent not to us, but through us, to something watching from beyond the warp, waiting to know when we are ready to be known. The Inquisition has already sealed records pertaining to it, not because they contain danger, but because they contain nothing. And it's the nothing that scares them. One Deathwatch captain, after 40 years of service, requested final vigil before the seal. He knelt before it for 9 days without food, sleep, or communion. When they found him, he was smiling. Just smiling. He said one thing before collapsing. It opened. But the seal was untouched, still perfect, still unmoved, still silent. Or maybe it didn't need to move at all. Because this is the truth no one says aloud, even in vox-scrambled crypt lingo or inquisitorial cant. The vault has never revealed everything. And it never will. Not until it decides there is no one left to understand. Not until the last key is turned in a war we didn't know we were fighting. Not until we become the last relic it offers, unreadable, broken, and buried in a chamber no one dares open. Until then, the final seal waits, and in its silence, it listens.